I'd like to maybe dive into a couple of these topics.
Yeah.
We can't obviously cover all of them, but a couple of the topics that I think would be really useful for the people listening in. The first one that I wanted to just talk about was something that you mentioned earlier in our conversation, which is about getting really clear on your ideal customer profile, your ICP. What would be your sales pitch to someone or a company founder or a sales team that, even if, just like we talked about this idea of problem-based prospecting versus product-based prospecting, even if they're like, yeah, I really know I should focus and I really know I should dial into an ICP, but I got to hit my number, or I don't want to miss out on an opportunity, or like our investors want to see that we've got a big pipeline. Like what would be your sales pitch to those people to get them to narrow down on their niche the way Aaron Ross thinks about it, or getting into like finding those great fit prospects?
It is a tough one because, even in the early days of Refract, looking back, funny enough, I got asked a question by someone saying, "Hey, Rich, just what is kind of one of your big lessons that you learned from taking Refract from, an idea on a Google Doc to the successful acquisition 6 years later?" And it was like, hey, like in those first couple of years, maybe even up to 3 years, is like we spent too much time swimming out of the swim lane and, trying to sell to everybody. And it was like, if you'd asked us then, like literally this is what I remember, like if you go back, say 4 or 5 years ago, people would say, "So who do you guys sell to? Who's Refract for?" And I'm like, "Anybody with a sales team," was my answer. Anybody with a sales team. And I was like, so people are like, "Wow, that's like every company in the world." I was like, "Yep.
That's a big TAM."
I was like, we got a big market. We're never going to run out of leads. And I think about it now, and it's like, well, like that. I'm saying it, and it's literally, I'm saying like, and this is someone I saw, Aaron Ross on stage at SaaStr, like years ago, and I sat there and he was telling me this stuff, and I was nodding my head saying, "Yeah, that makes sense." But then I'd go back to the UK and start selling to anybody with a sales team. I wasn't listening to what was actually being said. And it is tough because, especially when you're in that early stage, you want to demonstrate traction, revenue is king. You want to show that you got growing your client base, trying to impress investors, you're trying to unlock investors' money. It is very tempting. But ultimately what you find is that your best fit customers are the ones that ultimately innovate your product the best. You build a product for those best fit prospects. When you get in front of those prospects, everything just feels easier. Just the whole sales process just runs like a dream when you get in front of the right people. And the other thing is that they end up being your most successful customers. They end up staying longer with you. They end up, you get more expansion revenue out of them over time. Makes your churn figures look better. And I say all this, and I'm people might be listening to this and might agree with it all, but may end up going back to, let's just, well, maybe we should just try it. No, they're not.
We'll try that next month or next quarter or next year.
Yeah, and but all I can say is that's some lessons that I learned of like, hey, if only we'd done that, if only we'd understood that sooner, I think we could have made more progress than we did as a business, or got to where we are now, maybe quicker. But I'd also say that it's an ongoing process. Like we had a discussion this month, in fact, in between as a sales management team, as to like redefining who our ideal customer profiles are. And like it's about looking at, okay, what customers did we sign up last year? What were the attributes of that customer? Who's still with us now? Who's paying us the most money? Who's getting the most value? Who's the happiest? And you kind of find yourself just kind of tweaking and refining it. And I think that's important, especially in the world of software where, your product's evolving, but also the whole world is a different place now to what it was, 12 months ago. Working habits are different. The structures of sales teams is different. So you're daft if you just kind of think, oh, once you've got that cracked, then that's it for the next 5 years. That's all you're selling to. You should be constantly looking at it. But yeah, that is my. I can only say as like someone who's, I'm saying this to someone who I got asked that question what is your best lessons in the business, not just in sales? In the business is like, hey, like wish we just got much more stricter and much more focused on who those ICPs were a lot sooner.